Hi everybody. In this video we're going to talk about the derivatives of the remaining trig functions. So in a previous video you learned that the derivative of sine of x is equal to cosine of x, and that the derivative of cosine of x is equal to negative sine of x. So now we're going to look at the derivatives of the other four trig functions. So I want to take you through the proof of one of them, just so you kind of see how this works out. But in the circuit training that we did in class today, you actually came up with some of these derivatives just using product and quotient rule. Okay. So the idea is we use our trig identities and we rewrite tangent of x as sine divided by cosine, which is one of our quotient identities back from trigonometry. Then we could find the derivative just using the quotient rule. So in this case, we would do low, which is cosine of x, d high, which is the derivative of sine of x, which is cosine of x. And again, we're multiplying. Minus high, d low, so the derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x, all over low squared. Okay, so now just simplifying, cosine times cosine is cosine squared of x, and then we end up with negative sine times negative sine, which will be positive sine squared of x, all over cosine squared of x. And then using some more trig identities, if you remember the very important Pythagorean identity, sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x is equal to 1. So this will equal 1 over cosine squared of x. And then we can use a reciprocal identity. 1 over cosine of x is equal to secant of x. So that means 1 over cosine squared of x would equal secant squared of x. And that actually ends up being the derivative of tangent. The derivative of tangent is equal to secant squared of x. But that's how you can come up with it, just using trig identities and the product rule. And we could work out the remaining trig functions in a similar fashion, but just to save time, these are the remaining four trig derivatives. So derivative of tangent of x equals secant squared of x. Derivative of cotangent of x equals negative cosecant squared of x. Derivative of secant of x equals secant x times tangent x. And then the derivative of cosecant x equals negative cosecant x times cotangent x. Okay, now you guys, you have to memorize all of these, okay? So if you look at all 6, so I'm just going to bring down the sine and cosine. A couple things I want to show you here. One thing that will help you remember these, like you can always remember, with sine and cosine, they're each other's derivatives. But to help you remember which ones are negative, if you notice, if the trig function starts with a c, so cotangent, cosecant, cosine, then the derivative is negative. So that's kind of an easy way to remember which ones are negative. And then I kind of always remember like tangent and cotangent are the squared ones. And then for secant and cosecant, they start with themselves. So like derivative of secant is secant tangent. Derivative of cosecant is negative cosecant cotangent. So I don't know, you just have to find ways to remember these because you definitely have to know these. We will use these a lot. Okay? All right, so just a few examples of finding derivatives. Now remember, we're still using power, product, and quotient rules.
Miss Winston, if you are still in the building, please come to the media center. Miss Winston, please come to the media center.
So don't forget those other rules. But in our first example, y equals x minus tangent of x, in this case, we're just going to use the difference rule, and we're going to find the derivative of each term separately and subtract. So derivative of x is 1 minus derivative of tangent of x is secant squared of x. And that's it. It's that easy. Okay? As long as you know the rules, then it's that easy. Okay, now in our next example, the function is y equals x times secant of x. So remember, if you say times, that means product rule. Okay? So we've got to use product rule here. Okay, so in this case, our derivative would be first, which is x, times derivative of the second. And so remember, derivative of secant is secant x tangent x. Okay, plus second times derivative of the first, and derivative of x is 1, so we don't really have to write that. And then, you might see your answer choice on like a multiple choice question left like this, but I am noticing we could factor out secant of x from each term. So, maybe you'll see it written like this instead, factoring out secant of x from each term. So just be prepared. Sometimes you do have to factor. All right, so we're going to stop there, and we're going to practice with these trig derivatives, but still using power product quotient rule tomorrow. But I really need you guys to study these, okay? So the video is fairly short tonight, so please use some time to study these. You've got to know these 6 derivatives, okay? And in addition, power product quotient rule. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.